Hey guys, my name is Ryan and welcome to Overwatch Central. I'll try and keep the intro short. A couple of weeks ago, ironAngel on the competitive Overwatch subreddit came forward with an idea of a Bastion rework. To sum the rework idea up as fast as possible, it would be making Bastion a tank hero instead of a DPS hero. I know that seems ridiculous. Some things would include lowering his damage and also a new ability, Flash Shutter, which we'll talk about in this video. I really liked it, hence why we're talking about it. The competitive Overwatch subreddit really liked it, but I guess most importantly, Kolorblind, who is a player of Bastion for over 1,000 hours at least, really liked the idea too. So I sat down with them to sort of break it down, but I first wanted to ask why they like the Bastion rework idea so much.
The reason I agree with it is because there's before roll queue, I wouldn't have cared about this thread at all. Like before roll queue, this thread would have made no sense to me. But now that roll queue is out, and you can only have 2 of each role, then I think that's why this thread is so much more important, and that's why this idea is like it makes so much more sense because, you know, Bastion is a hero that like pretty much requires barriers, right? Whenever you run a Bastion, you got to run the barriers, and I've noticed that lately, whenever I pick Bastion in comp, it's always like, okay, we got to run 2 barriers, we got to go Arisa Sigma, and we got to just pocket the hell out of this Bastion, right? And like I'm not really down with that. I think that like one of the main reasons that putting Bastion as a tank is a good idea is because it would only allow you to run one other tank with Bastion. So you would only be you'd be limited to only running one other barrier hero. So you'd only be able to have Arisa and Bastion, or you'd only be able to have Sig Bastion. You wouldn't be able to have the cheesy like Ryan Bastion, the cheesy Ryan Arisa, Ryan Sigma Arisa, like those weird cheesy comps. I don't like those comps. You know, it's no fun to have to break through like 3,000 damage of barriers and then like the Baptiste Immortality Field and then the Bastion's Ironclad. It's all too messy. So the biggest point about this thread is definitely just the fact that Bastion would be moved from damage to tank, and there's ideas in here that like rebalance him to make him more of a tank, but just that idea alone I think is like enough of a reason for me to be like, okay, yeah, you know, thumbs up, this is a good idea. Nobody likes double shield Bastion, right?
I'm pretty sure, going off the thread, what were the nerfs, I suppose, that would come to Bastion? Because if you just made him a tank, he obviously can put out a lot of damage, so what's the trade-off of him being a lot more tankier, like a tank hero, versus him now? What would he lose? So
I think the biggest thing that he'll lose is his turret damage. That's one thing that the thread mentions, is that his turret damage would have to go down a decent amount, and I think that it should still stay high, because I think that if Bastion were to become an off tank, not a main tank, he would definitely be an off tank here. He would become the damage tank, you know? Like previously, I think that either Roadhog or Zarya has been seen as like the damage tank. You know, Zarya gets plenty of damage, and Hog is usually like seen for like picks and stuff, but I think that that title would definitely go over to Bastion, because he would do a lot of damage, but he wouldn't have a lot of like protective abilities. So he would be an odd tank, but the biggest nerf for sure would be his turret damage would have to go down. Like right now, it's I think it's 450 DPS, and the spread gets tighter as you shoot. The biggest thing is that the damage itself would go down, and it would also add a rev up mechanic, like you see in
It was Doom 2016, the chain gun.
Thank you. Yeah,
but you know, there's other games that do that, like Heavy from TF2 have elements of like wind up, and I guess that's what Bastion would be in a sense. He would be the Heavy of Overwatch.
Definitely. Oh, his playstyle would be so much more like Heavy, and it would the biggest example he used is it would make it so that, let's say I'm Bastion, I just go into turret mode, and like or I'm in recon mode and I see a Reaper coming up to 1v1 me. I'm like, uh-oh. Normally my reaction would be to go into turret mode and immediately have that 450 DPS, you know, like what is it? I believe it's 30 shots per second. It may be 35, I don't know for sure. That's a lot of damage right away, right? And even though like my spread gets tighter over time, if I'm point blank to someone, having wide spread doesn't matter. I'm still gonna do max damage, so I'm gonna win that 1v1 with the Reaper like 9 times out of 10. This rev up mechanic would mean that if I went into turret, I would have to start shooting and not only get my spread to be more accurate over time, but the fire rate would start out incredibly low and slowly increase over the course of 2 to 3 seconds. I would say 2 seconds would be fair, the same as the spread increase. So I wouldn't be able to just go in the turret and immediately start blowing out like crazy damage. It would be, I would go in the turret and I would slowly start doing more and more damage, because it's going to be more focused on area denial and shield breaking rather than like pure raw like damage output. So like the main purpose of it is going to be Bastion sets up in an area, and then he can deny that area the longer he's standing there in it, you know?
That makes sense. I think the thing that I like about this the most is when you didn't have Sigma in the game, the meta was very much Arisa Roadhog, and you'd have teams being very aggressive playing Arisa Roadhog. Then you'd have some teams that would try and counter it by playing Arisa Diva, and it's a lot more conservative. It's the same style, like you're still running an Arisa because she's so good right now, but teams with Diva would play more defensive because they had Diva versus a team with Roadhog that'd play more offensive. This feels like it would be a similar thing with Sigma, where you have Arisa Sigma being very defensive because of all of the barriers and stuff. Whereas if you could run Arisa Bastion as a tank line, that can almost like try and counter it, or those two comps go head to head, and they're both playing in different styles as opposed to both teams just running Arisa Sigma, if that makes sense. Like,
interesting that you bring that up. I was actually, so the whole, everybody knows right now that the meta is Arisa Sigma, right? And like, at the risk of sound, like, nobody really likes that. Nobody likes playing against Arisa Sigma. It's very difficult right now. There's, it's a lot of barriers, it's a lot of shields to break, this is the reason like heroes like Symmetra are being run to counter it, and on paper I thought Bastion would be amazing in this meta, but in practice Bastion gets absolutely decimated by Sigma because like pretty much all of Sigma's abilities just destroy Bastion. The barrier recharges and repositions really quickly. His shift attack is it's a get out of jail free card, and most importantly his accretion. But yeah, no, that ability is like that ability is the biggest counter to Bastion, because no matter how far you are from him, that the rock, when it hits Bastion, knocks him out of turret mode and stuns him for about 1.5 seconds, and that's a big problem. So if Bastion were to be reworked like this Reddit thread suggests, I think that Arisa Bastion, like you said, would be the new, it would be the counter to Sigma Arisa, because then you would have the Bastion to deny space, focus on barrier busting, but most importantly, the Bastion wouldn't need to rely so heavily on the Arisa barrier, because not only would he have the increased armor, which we can go over later, but he would also have the new ability called Flash Shutter, which I guess we should talk about. But basically, Flash Shutter would stop the assertion ability from shutting down Bastion for free, like every single team fight.
And stuff like Sleep as well, just those abilities that could be fired that would CC Bastion, because he himself can't really do much about it. This is the one area that I'm not too sure on, so like, would this be beneficial to Bastion in a way that was balanced, I suppose?
200% yes. I could not agree with this ability more. And now I know I may seem like I'm a little bit biased here, because I mean, I love Bastion, but yeah, no, as I was reading through the thread, I was like, this all sounds really interesting. And then I get to the Flash Shutter ability, and I'm like, what? Are you kidding me? This sounds broken as this sounds so overpowered. But the more I thought about it, the more I read about it, the more I realized, like, okay, Bastion would only have one other tank to support him, so it makes sense. If he was an off tank, he would need something to help himself. I think that it would be it'd be the equivalent of Roadhog's self-heal, if that makes sense, in the way that it's not like a defense matrix or a Zarya bubble, where it's like an ability made for tanking. It's like, and I mean, I guess Roadhog's ability is
very selfish.
Yeah, exactly. It's purely for the Bastion alone, and it would take a lot of skill to use. It would not be easy to land this thing. It would not be easy to get the timing right. The Reddit thread suggests that when you activate the Flash Shutter ability, it would only pop up a personal barrier in front of Bastion, similar to how it was during beta, for only a quarter of a second, and it would be on, I believe, like a 4 to 5 second cooldown. So you would have to, I mean, there's a little bit of mechanical skill there, obviously, with just getting the timing right. Like, it's a lot harder than it sounds to get the timing right on like things like a Sleep Dart. It might be a bit easier on stuff like Roadhog Hook or Sigma Rock, but what this Flash Shutter ability would do would be allow the Bastion to position himself in more aggressive areas, not really flanking per se, but just more aggressive areas to make space for his team, and be able to hold his own ground for the most part against Roadhogs and Annas and things that are trying to CC him and make him useless. The thing is, though, if the other team, now Bastion has always been a hero that is weak to coordination, right? The way to counter Bastion is always like work together as a team, dive him at the same time, focus him down from multiple angles, yada yada yada. So this Flash Shutter ability would fit in with that, because obviously one Anna on the other team wouldn't be able to counter me anymore if I were able to time my Flash Shutters correctly with her Sleep Darts. But if they had an Anna and a Roadhog, suddenly I'm in trouble. The Roadhog can bait out my Flash Shutter by throwing Hook, and then boom, the Anna gets a free Sleep Dart, right?
It also adds a bit more complexity to a hero that I think the ironAngel said was quite binary, and I think that's a really good way to describe how Bastion plays. It's very like primitive in a sense. So
Bastion is an incredibly simple hero, the most simple hero in the game, no question. And that's like one of the reasons I like him, because that makes him unique. But at the same time, like, yeah, after you play him for so long, or a new player trying to like get into him will be like, man, there's really not that much to do here. Like, you can get good at rocket jumping, you can You can get good at nope, that's about it. That's really the only mechanical like thing Bastion had was rocket jumping. So this flash shutter ability and the rev up time for the minigun would be 2 new mechanics to I don't want to say master, but 2 new mechanics to play with, you know? Just more toys to mess around with.
So you feel like when you play against a good Bastion, it's not just a bullshit hero, it's somebody being good on a relatively balanced hero.
Yeah, definitely. It would make Bastion more independent, and so it wouldn't just be like, you know, like how hard can we pocket this Bastion? It'd be like, how good is that Bastion? How good is their positioning? How good is their timing with flash shutter? How good is their resource management? Their self-heal management? Like now Bastion would have you know, another change they did was add the resource meter for self-heal. I forgot to mention that. That's a new mechanic they added, which was really cool, because previously Bastion didn't have a cooldown or a resource meter for self-heal. He could just heal all he wanted. So now he would have to worry about his meter for self-heal. He'd have to worry about his cooldown for flash shutter. He'd have to worry about, like, you know, like, do I need to be set up here so I can start revving up my minigun in case someone like rushes me in a second? Like, they'll have to think a lot more. Like, Bastion is already the kind of hero where you got to think a bit. It's not so much mechanical skill as it is like big brain skill. But like this would definitely add some mechanical skill on there, and I would be, you know, more than I'm sure the whole community would be more than happy to see that. It would make Bastion much harder to play. That's for sure.
Is there anything about this post that you don't like or disagree with?
So the only thing that I like have been thinking about, it's not that I don't agree with it, it's just like the one thing I've been thinking about is he says to keep recon and tank mode the same, and I can agree with recon mode. Like, I think recon mode is I think that'd be okay to leave the same. Like, it is a decent amount of damage, but again, I think Bastion should be the off tank that does he's the damage off tank. Obviously his hitbox is still huge, and it's not hard to focus him down. Maybe nerf the recon damage just a little bit. Maybe like I don't know, do something there, up the accuracy. I'm not sure. I'm not sure. Maybe you'd have to nerf recon mode. But the big thing is his ultimate tank configuration tank. I don't know if they should keep that. And and this is coming from someone who loves tank mode more than anything else in the game. I could talk about configuration tank for hours, and I have done that. But it's just that I don't like, you know, you think about like the other off tank ability or ultimate abilities, like Roadhog, Whole Hog is clearly meant to make space. It's meant to push people away, and I mean it does do damage, but right, but like I feel like all the tank abilities are like meant to like deny space, or like you know, Graviton like sucks people in, the mines like deny an area. Tank mode is purely meant for moving the Bastion around or doing damage, and I don't know if that would be a good off tank ability. But that's where I'm just like, that's where I don't know if I can answer that, you know. Like I don't know what makes an off tank ultimate ability an off tank ultimate ability, you know. So that's the only thing that I'm just kind of like, I don't know, you know. Like the way he says it is Bastion is a heavily aim dependent hero, so it makes sense to keep the ultimate the same. And I agree, the ultimate is hard to use, but would it be fair to have an off tank that has an ultimate ability that can one shot, you know, half the cast? That's the only thing that I'm like kind of rubbing my chin about. But everything else I'm like giving a big thumbs up to, you know.
And you've always been against a Bastion rework. I found your comment from the Reddit thread. I've just been reading it, and it must mean a lot. And people have described this whole post coming out of ironAngel as both like fun, dynamic, it makes sense, it's viable, but it also seems really balanced in a sense. So it must mean a lot if you're like, I'm down for this, when you're so against other Bastion rework ideas.
Yeah, so I've watched a lot of videos, I've read a lot of Reddit threads about Bastion rework ideas. I feel like I've seen pretty much every single one out there, and they all do pretty much the same thing. It's either a Bastion main who wants their hero to become viable all the time, or it's someone who hates Bastion who wants to see turret mode nerfed to the ground because they don't like playing against it. And it's like, this is the only rework thread where it's just like, this guy knows what he's talking about. He understands what makes Bastion Bastion. He understands what kind of role Bastion should fill. He understands what balance is. He understands that, like, you know, he just he's a smart guy. That's the simple way to put it. He's a smart guy who definitely understands this hero. He understands this game very well. And yeah, it's just like, he's not just like going like, oh, you know, I want Bastion to become like, you know, a must pick all the time because he's my favorite hero. Or it's not someone being like, oh, I don't really like playing against Bastion, so I'd rather see him just completely changed. You know, scrap turret thread, make turret mode a cooldown. Oh man, how can you make turret mode a cooldown? God. But yeah, no, this is like an unbiased, like, just what's the word? It's an unbiased idea, and yeah, it's very well thought out, very balanced. It just seems like an idea that like would fit well with. I mean, there might be a few things that might need to be changed here and there balance-wise, but overall, I think that this is a very, very good idea, very well thought out.
Finally, where can people see more of yourself and, I suppose, the future of Bastion?
Okay, so you can follow me at twitch.tv/kolorblind with a K, or I have a YouTube channel as well where I post like Bastion tutorial videos. I post like VODs of me playing, all kinds of cool stuff there. So if you're passionate about Bastion, then hit me up. We'll get along just fine. But yeah.
And that's it for this time. Thank you very much for watching. You can check out all of Kolorblind stuff in the description below. They will be live as this video goes out, so go and say hi, be nice. And until next time, take care. We'll see you then.